But let's get our first caller. So, Ian, how trauma combined with being autistic has prevented me from finding love. Being bullied makes you feel worthless, and then it makes it even harder to pick up on social cues. Ian, you're on with Hannah, Jenna, and Ethan. How are you?
Oh my God.
Hello.
I'm
Thank
so
you very
sorry.
much for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for calling. Go ahead. What did you? If you could expound on what you wanted to chat about.
Well, I want to let you know right off the bat that I'm like formally diagnosed autistic, and these kind of things are like very difficult. So like I'm a nervous wreck, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit, I'm afraid.
Take your time.
You're totally safe here. Nobody's going to judge you for anything. And just remember, though, we are not mental health or medical professionals in any way. We're just here to listen and, offer our own thoughts.
No, I really appreciate that, man, because I've been a fan of this show forever. And believe it or not, like I've never done a live call into a show before, but like I appreciate the sort of culture that you guys have grown here, and this is like a unique opportunity because I watch all of your shows with Jenna and the Pickup Line, so to have all three of you here is just like it inspired me to call in, especially given the topic.
Oh, that's awesome!
Thank you.
These are two of my favorite ladies, that's for sure.
These are two of my favorite peeps.
All three of you, you're all amazing people, and I really mean that.
Thank
you.
So to sort of get why I called in, because in spite of everything, as well as everything I've just said, the other thing that inspired me to call in was the topic, which is trauma and love or relationships or whatever. And I kind of figured that trauma and lack of same would maybe fall under the same umbrella of the topic, as I explained to the call screener. So I'll get to it. So one of the difficult facets of having to live a life of being autistic is inability to read social cues and body language particularly. So I tend to take things very literally, and I have a real hard time reading between the lines. So if someone says that like, oh, I'm okay, then I'll just believe them. And apparently you're supposed to be able to like tell that they're not okay. And anyway, the reason that's particular to the topic is apparently that I am unable to tell if somebody is interested in me, or those little social cues and flirty things that people do, but I just literally cannot pick up on them. But the reason that's become a toxic issue for me is because I'm a late diagnosed autistic. I wasn't diagnosed until 2 years ago when I was 35.
Congrats.
So I had 35 years of living being autistic, but not knowing that I was. So all of the air quotes strange behaviors that I exhibited, I now know in hindsight through research are like perfectly normal autistic behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that then. So I was always the weird kid, the one that flaps their hands and makes funny noises and doesn't get stuff. So I have been quite viciously bullied for my life, pretty much. Like I thought I always, like when I was in school, I used to sort of coach myself through it because it'll get better when you reach sixth form, which is our equivalent of college, I guess. And then when I was in sixth form, I was like, oh, it's okay because it's still school technically, so it'll get better when you get a job. And then I found it got even worse when I tried to sustain employment. And there's just to sort of demonstrate my point, there's a quote I'd like to share with you that is very rampant in the autistic community, and it's one I've internalized, is if you judge a fish by its inability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing it's stupid. And that kind of sums up the internalized bullying and worthlessness I've felt, which means that even if somebody was exhibiting some kind of interest in me, or the sort of subtle social cues that people give when they're interested in some sort of romantic scenario, like, not only am I already on the back foot of being able to pick that up, but even if I kind of do pick it up, I just dismiss it out of hand, because I'm like, well, they're not going to be interested in me, so I'm obviously reading into this the wrong way. And consequently, I've pretty much been single my entire life, and it's been difficult because it gets lonely sometimes, quite frankly. So yeah, that's why I called in. Sorry if I didn't articulate that very well.
So
That was beautiful.
I know not everyone is into hugs, so I want to give you a big non-touch hug.
Air hugs?
Air hug. Okay. I do
Thank
wish
you.
I could give you an air hug right now. I know what it's
I
like
appreciate that.
to be bullied and to be made to feel like the weird kid. To this day, I still feel like the weird kid. And yeah, I think all three of us are pretty weird. So
I mean, we are, but
Yeah. I can relate to that when I realized that I had ADHD, and I know that's like super different. Well, I mean, people say that sometimes they go hand in hand. I don't know, but I thought I was just weird and stupid for so long until I got that diagnosis, and then did research and was going to therapy and realizing, like, this is why I did all the things that I do. And there's other people that do the same thing. And that's actually very normal behavior for the way that you're wired. And it's like when you start to realize that so much, it's like it opens up this whole new world of possibility, because you understand yourself better. You can work on trying to explain yourself better or express yourself differently.
Right.
I don't know what it's like having autism, and I really feel for you, because like that does sound like, yeah, that could be so lonely. And then having that voice in your head that tells you, like, oh, no one's going to want to be interested in me because of things that people have told you. And I wish I had advice, like a way to just like be like, hey, do this and it will be fixed. But I just feel like the responsibility is on like the world, because I wish more people were aware of how to interact with people with autism, because I feel like it's something that is lacking. I don't know if I'm alone in feeling that way.
Amen.
Go ahead.
Amen. Absolutely. I mean, in the UK, we have something that's called Autism Awareness Month, which is a great step in the right direction. But unfortunately, all that means is that people light stuff up blue and put autism awareness signs up. But autism awareness, like actually sort of awareness of what it is to be autistic and the behavioral aspects and the psychological aspects that comes with, is sadly very lacking. And it's been a difficult journey for me. But if I may, Hannah, can I expand on what you said a minute ago? Because I've been on, it's the reason I'm emboldened enough to make this call is because of the journey I've been on over the last couple of years since I found out I was autistic. Because that for me was the missing piece. And when I, as you said, sort of researched all of the everything about autism and that, so I was like, oh, that's me. And I felt not alone. And all of a sudden, all of these like weird things that I used to hate myself for are now normal. And I've also, over the past 14 months, been in sort of quite intensive therapy. And I've kind of, believe it or not, me calling in would not have even been possible a few months ago. So like, believe it or not, this is progress.
that makes me happy.
But
That's
at the same
fantastic. Yeah, no,
Oh, thank you.
absolutely. Freaking cheers. That's wonderful. Like it sounds like you're doing everything right. I mean, I struggle with those like really nasty self thoughts. So I wish I could give better advice, but I mean, you're going to therapy. That's wonderful. But you mentioned that, when people say I'm fine when they're not fine, that is a pet peeve of mine. If you're not fine, don't say you're fine.
Okay, let me push back a little on that. The problem with that is there are times, like for me, I pick up on body language and tone, and sometimes people are just asking that to be courteous. They just want you to say, hey, I'm fine. They don't want to hear you complain, although I shouldn't call her complain. They don't want to hear you say something negative. So it's just kind of like a common courtesy.
No, not how are you? Oh, I'm fine. But I'm talking specifically when like, hey, are you okay? Because you seem like you're upset. I'm fine.
Oh, yeah.
It's not fine.
So the thing is that
if I may, like what Hannah just said is exactly where I was coming from. Like the whole, you can pick up that something's wrong and you're not quite sure what it is. So you're like, are you okay? And they'll be like, I'm fine. And you're like, all right, cool. And then they get mad at you because you're supposed to pick up on the fact that they're not fine when they said they were when you asked. And that's where I was coming from with that. I just wanted to clarify. I'm sorry for the miscommunication.
Yeah, and sometimes
to be fair,
okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you first.
I was just going to say, to be fair, I think that's a lot of people who don't know how to interpret that, because I don't think that there's a one answer to why people do that. I think there's many different reasons and different occasions and it's all on spectrums and all that. So I think there's a reason most people don't know what people are actually what's behind that, Right.
And I understand that sometimes it's not an appropriate time to be like, actually, I'm not fine. Here's all the reasons I'm upset. But when you like say you're fine, but you want the person to just dig deeper, it's like, why are you torturing this person?
So that's an interesting thing that I think has to do with trauma. And
yeah, I guess I'm just judgmental.
Well, just from my own experience, I've done that a lot. And that's part of what I think was part of my abusiveness on my part in my relationship is I would say, fine.
It's not fine.
And like, I'm like glaring at you while I'm saying it, right? I'm like, I'm trying to communicate something to you with my face only. And I want you to show me that you care enough about me to investigate further, because I'm making it glaringly obvious that I'm not fine, but I don't want to tell you right now because I don't think you care. So show me that you care by doing a little bit of digging. So that's kind of how my traumatized brain works.
Blew my mind.
What if,
I did not, like, that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. I'm just like, why do people just, because like, okay, I grew up like with a very Italian upbringing. So I'm just like, why don't you just say how you feel? Like, just yell.
There's a reason.
So what about in this situation where we have someone on the phone who wouldn't be able to pick up on that?
Yeah.
They aren't necessarily thinking this out when they're doing that. They're in an emotional state and they're just fight or flight. They're just responding. And I'm speaking very generally. God, I am by no means representing every person who says I'm fine.
But I think in your specific case, like, I think definitely put that on your checklist of ideal partners, of like someone who will be understanding of the fact that you need people to be, you need them to be direct. Because, no game.
Say what you mean what you say.
And that's hard to do because, so growing up in, at least my background, the way that I was raised, saying what you wanted or saying what you meant didn't get you anything.
Right.
Or didn't get me what I needed. So I had to find ways to manipulate my environment to get myself what I needed. And that took doing things like screening processes, like the fine thing.
Mine was just say it really loud. Eventually you'll get your way.
I did not. So
this brings me to think it's really interesting. People are all just like balls of trauma.
Yeah, basically.
You find whose trauma can kind of sort of mesh with yours and see if it's tolerable.
Yeah,
Like everyone's gonna have trauma, but the kind of trauma that would not be good for a caller would be someone who does not say what they mean. You know, and then that I'm not saying like if someone doesn't say what they mean, totally don't ever date them, but they need to be at least open to working on that.
I love that kind of finding whose trauma meshes with yours. That's exactly right.
I think I saw that on a meme or something.
I think there's one thing that we would be able to help this caller with. Perhaps Hannah, Jenna. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't assume. May I ask your? Okay, hang on. I got to think carefully here.
I'm straight. If that
thank you. Okay, thank you.
Ask what's your sexual orientation?
Okay. So I wasn't sure if I was supposed to ask that or not, if that's too personal. So I'm like, crap. Okay, so now
if you're opposed to a personal question.
I thought I'd bailed you out. I'm straight.
I'm glad you asked. So, Hannah, Jenna, perhaps if you're aware of any, I know you can't speak for all women, but if you're aware of any potential cues that Ian could look for. I know in my experience, one I've seen, and this, I can't say this is true in every scenario, but touch. If a woman is constantly touching you, I have noticed that usually means they're interested. No, that doesn't mean you should make a move or advance on them. Some people are just touchy, but that is one cue that I look for. Do you think that's accurate, or am I incorrect?
Everyone flirts differently. I feel like I don't know. That's really tricky. I mean, the only thing I can think of is like the only reason No, Jenna, you go, because I need to gather my thoughts because I don't know.
You know what? I think a good answer to that is yes.
What? To like the touching?
No, just yes. What I mean by that is when I first, it's like my God glass is shattered, right? And I'm seeing the world in a completely different light, and I'm trying to figure out, well, if we don't have the Bible and priests and the Pope and stuff, how do we know anything, right? And I come to Eric Murphy and I look at him with these terrified eyes and I say, how do we know things? How do we know anything? And he says, he just kind of laughs and says, yep. And that told me so much. That told me there is no answer. That like there just isn't. You just have to just go and it's trial and error.
Yeah.
You gotta just figure it out. I mean, that's the shitty part of, but that's what I'm learning life comes down to. We just have to figure it out. And no matter what title you put on your trauma, whether it's PTSD or CPTSD, or if you've been traumatized by being bullied or neglected or anything, no matter what label you put on it, you have a set of symptoms that you have to handle on a day-to-day basis. So do you.
Yeah.
Ian, we do have another caller we got to get to, but was there anything else you wanted to ask?
No, you've been very helpful, and thank you for your call. If I may, just very briefly before I go,
please take your time.
I'll give you an example of what I'll give you an example of what you're working with, to for lack of a better term. There's a girl called Lisa who I once went on a date with. This is one of the almosts, and we're friends now. So she told me after the fact that she was blatantly flirting with me, but I didn't pick up on any of it. And one of them, I took her to the cinema, and it was the first time I'd ever taken a lady to the cinema. And I obviously let her pick the movie, and I can't even remember what the movie was, but she kept trying to like feed me, as in we had this like big bucket of popcorn, and she'd pick a bit out and eat a bit, and then she'd try and put a bit in my mouth, and I found it really irritating. So I'm like, why is she feeding me? I don't understand. Like, why is she trying to put food in my mouth? I'm not an infant. I actually got irritated, and I found out like after the fact that was supposed to be like a seductive thing, and I was like, oh shit, why didn't you say that? And I realize this is a flaw on my part because I don't pick up on these things, but it is a genuine source of frustration.
Can I give you some advice?
I wonder. Yeah, please go for it.
Go check out, get a trustworthy chick friend, and go find some chick flicks.
Did you just say chick? I'm trying to remove that from my. I've been told that's bad to say, so I've been trying to remove that from my repertoire because I've made comments like, "Dude, look at the hot chick," and I've been told that that's not cool.
Well, the way that I'm intending to use it is not to say necessarily women, but all spectrum of women. So that's why I used the word chick, is because I feel like in my experience with it, it's a more broad term.
Okay.
What was your advice? You find a chick friend and do what?
Oh, and go get a shit ton of chick flicks and study.
Okay.
That's what I did.
Wait. Are you telling me to study chick flick movies?
The only reason I'm saying, and the reason I say to bring a chick friend with you is because she'll tell you when they're just bullshit and when they're not. But there are a lot of chick flicks out there, and what I mean by chick flick is just a generic term of typical like boy meets girl, very, very straight, very, very gender biased, but improving in Hollywood. But my point is that there's a lot of women who do a lot of those things, and that's why they're in the movies. And so if you're trying to understand more clues and cues and things like that, these chick flicks will expose a lot of them. I'm not saying do what you see in chick flicks.
No.
I'm saying that you can use them as a study tool, and it can not teach you necessarily, and it will teach you an exaggeration of what reality
when
is.
girls go like,
I'm just saying but that's what I did. Is I learned a lot from Mean Girls.
yeah,
I love Mean Girls.
Learned a lot from Mean Girls.
Okay.
Also, I learned what a condom was from Mean Girls because I was like, Mom, a condom.
Guilty pleasure. I love the movie 13 Going on 30.
That is my all-time fave.
Generate. That's my name.
Dude, we got to do the Thriller.
Oh my God, yes.
That would be so much fun. All atheists.
Sorry, Ian.
Sorry, sorry.
Ian,
I apologize. 3 ADHD friends here.
But,
it's all good. I love this show. Just listening to you guys banter is great.
we do have a couple more callers. Ian, thank you so much for taking the time and getting the courage to call in. And I definitely would invite you to call back anytime. It was nice talking to you.
I hope to hear from you again.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. Love you guys. And I love both your shows, both the mental health one with Jenna, which is a very important thing to be discussing and a much needed show in the world. And this one as well, because I've been listening to you guys talk about relationships for ages, sort of trying to pick up tips, I guess, for lack of a better term. Because like loneliness is difficult. But anyway, I'll conclude by saying thank you very much for taking my call. I'm sorry I was a bit nervous and a bit all over the place.
You were fine.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
I'm really glad you called.
Secular sexuality.
Thank you very much, guys.
Bye-bye.
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry.
I was just going to let you know that secular sexuality.
We just keep.
I was just going to let you know that secular sexuality is also a good resource in addition to this show to learn kind of a more progressive view on relationships. Add that to the chick flicks. So
yeah, definitely.
You know.
Awesome. All right, Ian.
All right,
thanks.
sweet. I'll check them out. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
That was a really good call. I enjoyed that.
I'm really glad you called. My cheeks hurt from smiling.
I hate that. Exercise.
Exercise smiling?
Yeah. Walk around with a pencil.
I know, right? Ugh. I needed that, though. That was nice.
It was actually, that was a pleasant call. And, going without companionship can be hard.
Yeah.
For me, I had briefly touched on like how I actually went years without sex. And that like really screwed with my mental health. Like your confidence, my confidence was completely shattered, especially like in intimate settings with women, because I was just so not used to it anymore. And I felt like so unwanted that it took time for me to start building my confidence in those situations again.
Trial and error.
Thank you for the $10 super chat, Jeremy Smith.
Thank you.
Your show serves a valuable purpose, and I thank you for what you're doing. Well, it's
our pleasure, man. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't be possible without Hannah. And Jenna, this is a great episode.
I'm so glad Jenna's here.
Me too.
I love y'all.